Oh, thank you. And now, let's answer a question, a letter from little Jack Horner, who sat in a corner. So I was guesting on a show, as I like to do, and someone brought up a question to me because we were being too cordial, and the host of the show wanted to get some action, some rallying up because we're all being friendly, and I said something controversial, and so let's talk about it here. So Jason on Grr Streams was asking me about why my beliefs changed. He didn't ask it in that way, and the conversation didn't develop that way, but that's the easiest way to explain it. And he wanted to know why my views changed on religion, why I would submit to the church just because some ancient people said something. Why would I submit to that? He asked why my opinions on things like guns and the death penalty and abortion changed. So let's cover that now. First off, church ruling and submitting. The reason why a Catholic or a Calvinist or any religious type, whether it be a Hindu or a Muslim of any type of sect, whether it be any religious order, why do we submit to certain rules and standards? It's the same reason why you submit to the government. That's our ruling body, and we have to submit or not be part of that organization. If you want to be Catholic, you have to submit to the Catholic Church's ruling. And the Catholic Church has very old rulings that go back 2,000 years. Now, we do reinterpret, but hey, what are you going to do? But that being said, I'm Catholic, so I submit to the Catholic Church. Because if I didn't, well, then I wouldn't be Catholic. Get it? But how did my views change? Well, let's talk about the death penalty. So I used to be pro-death penalty. The church used to be pro-death penalty. And then the church said that it was only good in certain aspects. The church's view on the death penalty has evolved. The idea, though, is that when you look at Jesus, who was crucified, who was executed by the state, and if you look at how he forgave the thief on the cross, and if you look at everything that the Bible says, you can infer from there that he would not be pro-death penalty. So you can say that the church's view has evolved as humanity has come up with options that are better than execution, or better than capital punishment on a state level. In certain circumstances, while necessary, if not necessary and it's possible to not do it, then don't. Find the more peaceful option. So, just as the church has evolved on the death penalty, so have I. When it comes to guns, I still believe in guns. I don't own any guns. I'm not a gun kind of guy. I used to shoot guns all the time on the regular. I did that for 3 years back when I was very, very young. Usually an M14 or a 22, but I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that since maybe I was 21 was the last time I shot. And then recently, like maybe a year ago, I took my wife to a gun range just because she'd never shot a gun before. So I thought I'd, let her have that experience. Here's what I found out when I re-shot a gun. Not for me. I still like rifles. That's bolt action. They can only do 1 shot at a time, or maybe only 3 or 4 shots at a time. It's more than enough for me. I like swords. That's my weapon of choice. I've spent years and years and years, and over 15 years actually, maybe even over 20 years learning about swords. I'm fairly proficient on it. I'm great at martial arts. Swords I'm not great with, but I love them. I love swords. I love HEMA. I love Kendo. I love IDEO. I love swords. So, and I like the Sai. So I'm not against weapons, and let me tell you why. Guns have literally saved my life. And I've told this story on this channel before, but I'll make it quick. When I was younger and I was in a field and I was playing, my dad and my uncle were hanging out. And he's not really my uncle, but extended family. This is the South, so everyone's an uncle. And a rattlesnake popped up and was gonna bite me and would have killed me. And my uncle, from his truck, way down on the road, on the other side of the field, just yelled at me, "Stand still." And before I could know what was happening, the head of the snake went poof, and he, from his truck, all the way on the other side of the field, killed the snake before the snake could kill me. So a gun saved my life. A rifle, to use the correct verbiage. Let's fast forward more than a few years to when I was dating a particular person. This woman had a child, and they were out in their grandfather's ranch, and a bobcat was going to attack her child. She had a gun in the car. I think it was a gun. It might have been a rifle, but I believe it was a gun. And at first she just told her daughter to stand still, just like my uncle did. And as the bobcat started to charge at the child, she shot the bobcat dead and saved her daughter's life. So in rural places and in places that have field and country, guns are very necessary because wild animals don't care about progressive stances. All they care about is whether or not you're edible, or whether or not they think you are a threat. And if they perceive you as a threat, even if you're not, they're going to bite. And sometimes those bites and those claws and those maulings kill. So if you don't want a small child to be mauled or killed, you will not take away guns from people who live in rural areas. And then let's talk about how I progressed in my views on abortion. So I used to be pro-choice when I was very young. From, 12 to, let's say, 18, I was pro-choice. And my view on that changed to be pro-free will. What's the difference? Pro-free will is this. Pro-free will says that me, personally, I am pro-life. I am pro-life when it comes to me. I was maybe about 22 or 25 when I decided this. I'm pro-life when it comes to me, but when it comes to you, if you're not part of the religion, if you're not a Catholic, if you're not Jewish, if you're not Muslim, then you don't have to live by our rules. You're not in our group. You're not part of our in-group. So whatever you want to do is on you, but understand that you're going to have to answer to God one way or the other. And that was my view for a very long time. And I know that there's a lot of Catholics out there, and even some priests, who hold that view. I didn't know that at the time. I know that now. But I came up with that view myself. And then later on, I found out that other Catholics held that view. And then I started watching Catholic Answers live fairly often. And Trent Horn would always come on, and he would do his why are you pro-abortion, or why are you not against abortion episodes. And I would listen to him and listen to him and listen to him. Never really did anything for me. In fact, they turned me off to a lot of the views, the anti-abortion views. So you'd think I'd be becoming more pro-choice. But he had on a guest one time who, the guest, and I think it was a priest before him that actually gave the answer, but then the guest explained it in a better way. And what the priest said was that, well, this is the ruling of the Catholic Church going back to the beginnings of the church. And the way that they explained it convinced me that that was the ruling of the church. So it didn't convince me that the argument was good. It convinced me that the church ruling was this, and that if you're going to be a Catholic, you have to submit to the ruling. So that's where I first went, was simple submission, acceptance. So I didn't understand it, but I'm going to agree with it. Then this scientist was interviewed multiple times on the program, and several times by Trent Horn, and she got into the argument about whether or not human embryos are human. And she came up with the very obvious answer that obviously, if it's a human embryo, it's still human. That answer was good enough for me, intellectually satisfying. Again, did not change any of the arguments for me, didn't make any of the arguments convincing, but I now had 3 reasons to believe. I had 2 reasons to believe. There's going to be a third in a second. I had that the church says so, that there is a scientific argument for the pro-life stance, even if it's not a convincing argument. And I was like, okay. The third argument was that the church fathers said so. So I read the church fathers, and sure enough, in the Didache, which I just recently read, but also throughout reading the liturgy of the hours, it was very clear that the ruling of the church is pro-life. And so I now had 3 reasons. I had tradition, I had science, and I had church ruling. But then there was a 4th reason, and the 4th reason is the least convincing. My cat, who I love, who I've had for over 10 years, got pregnant, and we went to get her fixed. I didn't know she was pregnant. I just knew that she was having sex with a cat. And I was like, okay, we got to stop that. So we went to go get her fixed. And the doctor, when I came back to pick her up, said, oh, she was pregnant. And I felt really terrible. I really did. I felt guilty. And I was surprised that I felt guilty because I've been pro-choice, and then after being pro-choice, I was pro-free will, and this is an animal, and I eat animals. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a vegan. But I thought, okay, it's still an animal. I've seen these animals torture and kill birds. I've seen these animals hunt down mice. I've seen these animals kill snakes. I've seen what they do to their prey. I know they're not soft, cuddly animals. I know that they're killing machines, and they're my pets. I get it. I didn't have like an ideal of animals, right? But then I saw how she responded after. She was lonely. She was depressed. She did all the things that cats do when they're depressed. And it made me realize that this animal that I don't idolize, that I don't hold as human, but I do consider a pet, I do consider in my care, that not only do I feel like I wronged her, but she felt like something bad had happened to her. And so I now had a fifth reason, which was emotional. So I had a religious reason, which was the ruling of the church. I had a simple scientific argument that wasn't convincing, but at least it was there. I had an argument from tradition, which was the church fathers. And I now had an emotional reason. That I felt bad that I had let that happen to my cat. And I saw that this animal, which is still an animal, suffered because of a choice that I had made for her. So if I can't hold myself up to the ideal of an animal who would eat its own child if it came out deformed, an animal who would torture a bird it would catch before it would eat it, if I was no better, and in fact worse than an animal, well, then maybe my view on this really did change. Not just I submitted to the church, not just I submitted to some old ancient people's opinions, but my opinion itself, through reading them, through studying them, and through my faith had changed. Well, then I myself was no longer okay with it. Now, I'm not an activist. I'm not arguing for pro-life. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm also no longer supporting is the wrong word, but I'm no longer intellectually supporting pro-choice. So while I still hold to the same free will idea that if you're outside of the faith, you're not part of the church, you don't have to submit to the church, it's still a moral wrong. And if you come into the church, you should still confess it. And you should still seek absolution for it. If you become a Catholic, or you become a Christian, or you become a Muslim, you should find a way for repentance and forgiveness if you do become. So I'm still not I'm not an activist against abortion, but I'm no longer passively supporting it. My view had changed, and it had changed because of all those things put together. And the cat thing that I told Jason was just my realization that my view had changed. All right, that's it. Peace, like, and subscribe. All right, bye.